record this thing. Okay. So today's topic is about safety culture. Okay, first thing first. Is it? A second here. The first slide here. Okay. Okay. Let's revise back what is an accident. So accident by definition is basically unexpected event, unplanned, or unwanted event where basically people do not want accident. And normally accident do not happen by itself. It basically have a few what we call a related event. When accident happen, then only people basically relate to the previous accident, to the previous experience or event. Then only they start talking or telling things. Oh, no wonder why this thing happened and that thing happened. If people are able to predict, not to say predict, able to read all kind of signs that perhaps they can do something or even try to minimize uh, the accident, minimize or prevent the accident. And when the accident happened, it basically resulted in injury, illness to individual or group of people, damage to property, equipment, or even though nobody get hurt, that's what we call near miss event. But it basically tells us something. If you do not take care of the near miss event, meaning to say one day somebody will get injured or basically die, or to a certain extent causing property damage or environmental damage, or in combination. So that is what accident is all about. And in contrary to that, we want to take a look at the safety. What is safety actually? Safety mean measure and practice that we can implement in order to avoid so-called the accident. We want to avoid the losses, injury, illness, death, or even damage to the environment. That is what we call safety. And then what is the culture? So culture by definition is way of life, the custom, belief, attitude of the people individually. And if that individual mix with a group of people, we can say a group behavior or even organizational behavior. When you combine those wording together, then we do have what we call safety culture. So safety culture is defined as a set of deep-seated values, attitude, perception, and practice that guide the safety and health behavior of the management and staff of an organization. So basically, we want to implement safety culture in an organization or in a company, because when you put that thing in the perspective of business, that can have a bigger impact. Okay, so that will be the safety culture. Just remember the wording: values, attitude, perception, and practice. Okay. And when basically did this safety culture basically started? It started way back in 1986 after the event of Chernobyl disaster. You can basically go to the YouTube and watch the documentary, whatever, about the Chernobyl. Chernobyl basically happened way back in 1986. This is a picture of the what we call nuclear power plant. Okay, nuclear power plant, meaning to say power plant that generate electricity being fueled by nuclear. We do have a lot of power plant in Malaysia as well. There are nuclear power plant everywhere in the world, because in order to generate electricity, you need to have one. But in Malaysia, we are being generated by LNG, petroleum, coal. Okay, we do not have the luxury of nuclear technology, so we do not do that. But in countries like in Ukraine, so Chernobyl basically located in Ukraine. Ukraine was part of Russia at that time. Okay, now they separated already. So in country like Russia, US, even European, and then Japan, especially since they imported most of the fuel, LNG and whatnot, so they thought it might be cheaper to use the nuclear to generate electricity. Okay, but when earthquake and tsunami hit Fukushima way back in 2011, now the Japanese government has revised the fuel, so-called electricity plan. They basically try to cut off nuclear power plant. They're now going for renewable energy. Okay, because they know it is such a great danger once that thing being exposed to tsunami or earthquake. Okay, so going back to Chernobyl, when disaster strike, and then of course they did the investigation. Why basically could be the possible result of the accident. And in the accident report, for the first time, the word safety culture appear in those reports. And subsequently, the big industrial accident that happened after that always mention about the word of safety culture. So that is when basically the word safety culture basically started due to the Chernobyl disaster. Okay, going back to Chernobyl, why it was considered as a major turning event, not only the word safety culture basically appear, but it was considered as one of the biggest industrial accident happened even until now. And the estimated losses was around 200 billion US dollar. And you see, because it is nuclear, when nuclear basically exploded, whatever, the reactor, for sure, a lot of people have to run away from that area. And over 30-kilometer radius of that area is basically no man's land. Similar to Fukushima, when the tsunami hit, 30 to even 40 kilometer was no man's land. Okay, and of course, a lot of people have to be to be resettled. 1.7 million. Just imagine how to move this huge number of people away. So just imagine if we do have nuclear power plant situated in Johor Bahru, for instance, Johor Bahru city, and then suddenly disaster struck. Okay, 30-kilometer radius of area have to be abandoned. What would happen to even Singapore, which is very close to JB? We even in Skudai is just 22 kilometer away from JB. So what would the impact to the social, economic of that particular area or even a nation? And then even though when the accident happened, not so many people die due to the explosion, but later on, because we know that the nuclear radiation can cause cancer, so a lot of people affected, including the newborn babies, the what we call the animal, the plant, etc., etc. Okay, and immediately after the explosion, uh, the nuclear, the radiation is still there. They need to contain the reactor, okay, the exploded reactor, and they need to contain using the steel plate. You see the picture on the right side here is a big concrete and steel, whatever they put it, just to contain the life, what we call radiation, and that thing alone cost 2 billion. Similarly, in Fukushima, they did the same things. Okay, because you cannot basically shut off the radiation just like that. You need to basically contain it. Is still there even until now. Okay, so that is the one of the biggest industrial accident in the history of human life. Okay, and then not to forget other industrial accident. Example, Union Carbide, Bhopal, is in India. Okay, so if you look at this picture, this is what we call a chemical plant that produce a chemical product, doesn't matter, pesticide, whatever. And if you look at this particular plant, we in Malaysia do have similar plant. If you go to Pasir Gudang near the port there, you can see this type of plant is a lot there. Okay, so just imagine one day explosion happened. This is what the picture looks like. Okay, way back in 1984. In fact, much earlier than the Chernobyl. But because it is not a nuclear power plant, just chemical plant, so at that particular time, the safety culture was not being mentioned yet, okay? But the impact is still very big considering that the plant was situated very close to uh, a high population nation such as in India. So just imagine 20,000 people die, 500,000 exposed to the gas and suffer even until now. And it basically the cost of litigation, the settlement is about 500,000,000. But the funny thing is that even until now, there are still people trying to go to the court to get money out of the compensation. And way 2012, I guess, there was some court revision of the litigation going into around 1.1 billion US dollars. Okay, that is example. And then when disaster struck, the investigation was going on and they figure out what could be the reason. One is the factory sitting. For sure, when you build something in India where the population is in billion or whatever, for sure there are a lot of people will be affected. Okay, similarly, in Pasir Gudang in Malaysia, we do have industrial area in Pasir Gudang because it is very close to the port. When you produce something, you can export that thing quickly. But then what happened is that the business people then start thinking, oh, why then we build houses so that the factory people can, because they have good economy, whatever, they can buy houses. Maybe initially the house was a few kilometers away from the industrial area, but then when the development going on and on and on, the area becomes so scarce, limited, and they encroach into closer and closer into the industrial area. And when things is not, when a few months back, as you remember, some waste dumping, okay, some waste dumping in that Pasir Gudang area, causing a lot of health issue. About 4 to 5,000 people affected, not because of the plant exploded or so, but just simply because of dumping of the waste product. It has been going on for many, many years. then suddenly maybe the land cannot cope anymore and resurface, then a lot of people affected. Okay, just imagine. And then number two, large product inventory. Okay, so when you buy product in large quantity, so you put into the store, when explosion happen, then everything will be affected. Okay. The third one, this is the issue. Abandonment of safeguard. Meaning to say, in this situation, save money using what we call spare part, cheap spare part. Okay. This is the issue with safety. Because you need to maintain, when you are in the factory, there are some part that will have a wear and tear over a certain period of time, then you need to replace. And sometimes you want the spare part, a cheaper one, okay? And sometimes there are a lot of issue with regard to the ethic, okay? The ethic of the people who did the maintenance. Sometimes they went to the shop or hardware, whatever, they bought the cheaper one, but then in the bill, they put a higher price. That is the ethical issue, okay? But at the end of the day, when that kind of cheap spare part exposed to high temperature, the explosion will happen. And this is what really happened actually. And then the fourth one, medical unpreparedness. Okay, so when accident happen, how prepared are we with regard to handling with people who basically have some kind of minor injury, or people who are suffocated that you need to give a quick treatment. So that's why nowadays you need to have some kind of certification with regard to first aid injury. There should be people who have gone through courses with regard to CPR. So nowadays, under our law, we encourage workers, if for instance you have how many number of workers, one of them or few of them should be sent to training to get those kind of certifications so that they can help others with when things like this happen. Okay, so similarly, when things happen and then a lot of people affected, so how do we react to emergency? Most of the time we are not being prepared. Not to say in India, or even if disaster struck in even in Malaysia, I think we are going to be to get worse hit. Why? Because we are not fully prepared. Because being living in Malaysia, we are relatively safe country in terms of we do not have the earthquake, we do not have the typhoon, we do not even have the snow. People do not know how to react to the cold weather anyway, and many things. We do not have terrorism or whatnot. We are not used to that kind of situation. So let's say one day a big things happen, some people simply get panic, and our medical facilities are not being prepared. That is the issue, and a lot of people die or suffered seriously while waiting to get the first treatment. So if we can react very fast, perhaps we can basically reduce the number of serious cases. I do have one, my student right now doing a master project with regard to emergency response and preparedness in the construction site. We know it is not being practiced, but we want to know the extent, what are the best practice available in many countries in terms of some kind of code of what we call practice. That would be one thing, and then we want to measure to what extent those kind of thing being practiced at the construction site, and we want to know, okay, exactly the situation. Okay, all right, that would be the Chernobyl. Okay, this is a small video. I'm not really sure whether you can hear the sound or not. Never mind. Okay. This has just happened last year in March, China. Chemical plant explosion. Okay. You notice this, the picture, the video of the plant after the blasting. It is like a war zone. Everything gone. Okay. Okay. Xiangshui chemical plant, 2019, March 2019. 78 people died, 617 injured, and the cost of economic loss was estimated around 284 million US dollars. Okay, this is just last year event. This is a chemical event similar to what happened to Bhopal, and we do have a lot of chemical plant around in Malaysia, especially near the port and near the what we call petroleum processing plant. If you go to a place like Bintulu, like Kerteh, Port Dickson, we do have a lot of chemical plant there. Okay, this is another example. Piper Alpha oil rig. If you study safety, for instance, you are going to be exposed to major industrial accident. This is one of the example, a few example. Piper Alpha oil rig losses around 3.4 billion happened way back in 1988. It was famous due to the fact it was the largest oil producer in the world. That platform alone can produce 317,000 barrels of oil. I think Malaysia per day so cannot produce that much. Okay. 167 workers die, and for sure when explosion happened at the oil rig, well, you basically know where to run anyway. Okay, either you die at the platform or you jump off the into the ocean and then you get killed by the shark or whatever. Okay, it's the same situation. And then Deepwater Horizon. Maybe you have watched movie out of this event. Okay, uh, similar. It is an oil platform. 2010. Not many people die compared to Piper Alpha, but it was famous due to the fact that it was the deepest oil well in history at 10.7 kilometer depth. Okay, so you just imagine when it is very deep, you can imagine how about the pressure. Okay, so the pressure that basically make the explosion very big and basically non-stop. Okay, at the end of the day, the whole platform basically sank into the ocean. And this oil platform belonged to basically was rented by BP Petroleum. And due to that accident alone, it cost the BP Petroleum to pay a lot of compensation to many countries because the oil spill was one of the biggest in the history of human life, and it was estimated to be around 65 billion. So just one accident, and then it cost the money, it cost the company a lot of money. Okay, but BP was being forced to sell off some of the company in order to finance these costs. But BP is still being one of the biggest. I think the biggest oil company in the world. I think it is still either BP, Exxon, something like that. So they're still sustainable. If it happened to a small company, by now that company should have been gone actually. All right. Okay, so accident still happening regardless of the advancement of knowledge, how much we know about safety and whatnot, because to curb the accident from happening 100%, I think it is almost impossible job. Why? Because a lot of things that accident have something to do with what we call human error. That is the issue. Okay, safety management system, SMS, or OSH management system that we have learned at the beginning of our class is good because it provides a systematic approach in managing safety. So that's what OSH management system, example ISO 45001, is meant to be. Okay, it is very good. But when we investigated the causes of accident, a lot of issue, basically the deep, especially with regard to the root causes of accident, we can trace back it basically relate to cultural issue compared to other issue. Okay, so why people are not motivated, why people are doing this and that and that and that, everything can be traced back to the issue of culture, safety culture. So if that is the situation, meaning to say we are tackling the accident approach maybe not accurately. If the culture is the issue, and then if we approach at different things other than culture, so that's why accident keep going on and on and on and on. We do not go to the exact root of the problem actually. And our culture basically determine what we regard as important, determine as normal and acceptable, and then culture can act as a multiplier on many safety elements. Okay, because it basically relate to the utilization of machinery, and then it basically shape the people behavior, and then it basically make the system well audited. Okay, that is what culture is all about. And having safety management system is very good because it provides a systematic approach to safety management, but it is not going to be comprehensive. That is the issue with safety management system, which sometimes can be associated with what we call paper-based management. Because everything that you manage, you put it on document, whereas in reality, people basically can somehow cheat. People report different things, but people do different things. Because when auditor come, auditor won't be able to spend most of the time with you, looking at the way you manage things. The auditor only look at the document. You can report anything or you can promise anything that is basically easy, and then if you fulfill that promise, then basically you already pass. But that is not really the real things. So the real thing basically have to be complemented by having so-called safety culture. It is the safety culture that makes sure things are running well. People do things willingly. No need, for instance, safety inspector, safety and health officer, or your supervisor or your boss to tell you what to do with regard to safety and health. You are the one that doing that thing because you feel you want to save your life. It is similar situation with regard to this COVID. Okay, we need to basically have we need to change our culture if we want to live in this kind of COVID environment. The government is there, but as you know, the government officer or enforcement officer will not be able to look at everything because we know that how many police officer in Taman University. Maybe you can count maybe around 20 only. 20 people have to work 24 hours. So meaning to say, we cannot rely on them to check on us. But if we do have a good culture, taking care of our own self or family, then basically this thing will be running smoothly. Okay, so this is what safety culture is all about. Okay, you are the one that do the things because you think that is the right thing to do. So in organization, having safety culture, having safety management system is good enough, but then you need to add safety culture. Okay, both. So that's why organization who basically just implement safety management system, then you can expect there will be accident coming, going to happen again and again and again and again because it's not going to be comprehensive. So having safety management system is good. Plus, you need to try to inculcate, try to basically develop or put safety culture as part and parcel of your organizational objective. Okay, then only you can see a good result. Okay, from the relationship, okay, that we have seen before, between the number of accident and then time taken, it looks like if you implement some kind of safety program, previously in many organizations, people do implement safety program. Okay, so it is good. You can see that the number of accident reducing, but then it will get stuck at some point, meaning to say there is no room to improve anymore. Then that's why people invented OSH management system. This is like OSH management system. Example, ISO 45001, so that to reduce the number of accidents further. And we can see the result. Okay, once you do that, you can see the result of the accident number decreasing and decreasing. But then again, to a certain extent, even though if you have said OSH management system, there will be some kind of limit. People maybe get tired of the system, and then people try to be complacent. Complacent meaning to say you thought that the system is running well, then you are not being careful, and then one day accident will happen. Okay, so then what next? So that's why people invented the culture, safety culture, in order to further reduce the accident. But again, even though we have implemented safety culture, but we never know, because human being, you never know, because there could be a what we call a situation where you are too complacent, you overconfident. Then again, the saturation point will be there. So that's why people in the oil and gas industry, example, in oil and gas industry, if you want to make example to refer to, oil and gas industry has been, for many, many years, has been an industry where safety being put at the highest level. Okay, even at that particular industry, they are looking at what else that they can do in order to further improve and improve. So that's why the next, they already implement safety culture. Okay, that would be fine. What will be next? So that's why in oil and gas industry, what's next? They are looking at what we call behavioral based safety, BBS. Okay, so if you basically Google BBS, then basically perhaps you will understand. Okay, is one of the way to further enhance the safety culture. Okay, let me get this thing running. Okay, okay. So the relationship between safety performance and the implementation of safety program. If we just simply implement safety program, so I call it engineering, then for sure the safety performance improve. There is no doubt about that. But then again, there is a limited improvement at some time, some point of time. Then basically we need new things. So that's why in safety management system are being introduced. Then we can see the performance improve a little bit again. Then there will be a saturation point, and then perhaps we need a safety culture. Then there will be improvement. But then again, even though if you already implement safety culture, but there will be a saturation point. So that's why in the oil and gas industry, perhaps they already have a safety culture in place. Maybe certain organization, they already reached the maturity period of safety culture. So they are looking at the other things. One of the things they are basically implementing in the oil and gas industry is basically BBS, behavioral based safety. Okay. All right. So the issue is that how do we measure culture, safety culture? Can we measure safety culture? Okay. So from many literature or researcher, previously they trying to come up with the tools, way to measure. And there are a few measurement, what we call tools. We can use so-called safety climate survey, observation of the behavior, looking at the positive indicator or what we call leading indicator that I mentioned last 2 weeks, and then looking at the acceptance of responsibility, how many number of safety audits, and then not to forget statistic. Okay, statistic again still could be useful in order to show what is happening with regard to accident rate, near miss rate, etc., etc. Okay, so and then safety climate survey. What are the things inside safety climate survey? Element. So one of the element is basically leadership. We measure on leadership, work group, friendliness, test ambiguity, and then professional organization, job challenges, and mutual trust. So there are elements of things that we can measure, and the type of measurement could be either observation, questionnaire, interview. Okay, so actually we can measure safety culture. This is just simply one of the tools. Okay, and then we also can measure target behavior. As I mentioned to you last 2 weeks, psychologists have basically gone through many research. So they come up with the so-called findings that human being, in terms of behavior, you can measure. Okay, you can measure the behavior of human being because there are bad behavior and good behavior. If you can measure that thing, at the end of the day, we can know how many people basically possess good or bad behavior. If there are so many people showing a lot of bad behavior in that organization, meaning to say there are potential accident waiting to happen. Okay, that is the relationship between what we call behaviors and the impact of what we call a potential accident. All right, and then result on safety climate measurement. Okay, if you Google, okay, if you Google the topic of safety climate, perhaps you can find one of my paper. Okay, my paper in proceeding or journal, couldn't remember. Okay, what happened was that this is just result that I have taken from that particular research. What happened is that we use a safety climate measurement to measure to what extent basically safety culture are being practiced. This radar plot show two group of people, engineer and then supervisor. The dotted line are engineer and then supervisor is basically the thick line. And then these are the management, what we call element of safety climate that we measure. One in terms of management commitment, communication, priority of safety, safety rules, supportive environment, involvement, personal priority, personal appreciation, and then work environment. The scoring is basically 10 point for each of the element. Okay, and from the radar plot, we can see which area basically need improvement. What is the comparison between engineer and basically supervisor? Normally, when you want to measure the safety culture should be measured in organization. So you need to basically go to the top management. You measure using either survey, questionnaire survey, interview, or observation. Similarly, it should be going to everybody, including the workers. Then only you can conclude what kind of safety culture basically level at that particular organization. And then in conclusion, out of that safety climate measurement, for instance, we can indicate that thing by positive or negative. You notice that there is negative things. There are two things: work environment and appreciation of risk, which need to be improved. Whereas the other element are quite okay. When it is positive, meaning to say those things are okay already, then basically you need to focus on the negative result. That's how you measure the safety culture in that particular organization. And then from the result, you take action, what to improve. Okay. All right. This is just example. And from the accident triangle in my class accident causation last time, we show about accident triangle. Normally, for many, many years, researchers only focus on this triangle, the top triangle. Way back, Heinrich in 1930s, he came into conclusion. He made basically a safety triangle. I think consists of 3 layers. Okay, 3 layers only. Consists of near miss and then minor injury and serious injury. He did not put the property damage, but then came the other researcher such as what we call Frank Bird and then other researcher in UK and in US. They come up with this so-called accident triangle, but they stop at this what we call triangle only. Then later on, Many what we call current researcher, after investigating all kind of things, then only they realize there are bigger thing inside this triangle that we have been missing. So that triangle is basically called behavior. And what does this behavior have anything to do with culture? Then if you go back to the definition of safety culture basically relate very much at this wording, because safety culture define the values, the belief, the perception and practice. So all those things basically have something to do with how people behave. Okay, that's what basically explain why basically accidents still happening again and again, because we have not tackled perhaps at the root cause of the issue. So the root cause of the issue is basically the behavior. All right, and then if we want to implement safety culture in our organization, the issue is that how do we do that? Okay, many organization or even institutions such as ILO, International Labour Organization, had come out with the model, safety culture model. Okay, they call it safety culture model that focus on what? Individual commitment, managers commitment, and then organization commitment. Okay, so the three party should collaborate and should basically play part. Then only we can see the safety culture is going to kickstart in your organization. And then HSE, HSE again stand for Health and Safety Executive in UK. You can go to the HSE website. There are a lot of information with regard to safety and health issues, topic. They also came out with these safety culture model, but in a more simplified manners. But again, it focused on the same, almost the same thing, individual, and then organization, and then leadership or people or the management. Okay, so again, the management commitment, the workers commitment, and then the company itself that can make a lot of differences in terms of safety culture. So in Malaysia, we do have one document for safety culture. You can go to the dosh.government.my to get this document. You can download. So we do have this model. Our model basically start with a step. Okay. Step one is basically we call it pathological step. Pathological simply mean who care as long as we are not caught. This is what we call old mentality. Even until now, some people still have this mentality. They do all kind of things. As long as the authority is not coming, nobody knows, okay, we are relatively safe. Okay, that will be the bottom of the step. But then you need to improve. Having this step for starting is okay. But then what will be next? Next is what we call reactive. Reactive meaning to say safety is important. We do a lot every time we have an accident. This is what we call reactive monitoring. Let's say nothing happened. Okay, if nothing happened, then you do nothing. If accident happened, then only you start to do something to make some kind of improvement. Okay, so perhaps this thing people also implemented, but this is better than the previous step, basically doing nothing. And then the third one, calculative. What is calculative? Okay, calculative is similar to having some kind of OSH management system around. Okay, so you already realize that you need to have some kind of safety program, or then you document those things, put that thing in a proper file, then you train your people. Okay, that will be fine. Okay, having this team is very good, but it's not going to be sufficient because you will not be able to have that safety culture yet. Okay, for the starting, this OSH management system, I would say this is very good. But then the next step, proactive. Okay, proactive mean after having implemented OSH management system, which is good already, then you focus on problem, you focus on improving on the things that you cannot improve. You find what we call non-compliance. They must be non-compliant to certain area. So you focus your energy on improving those things. Then only you are going to have a perfect system running. The last one is what we call generative. Generative is the thinking or the system that call OSH is how we do business around here. So meaning to say, this is what we call safety culture is there already, because you cannot do away with the OSH. Okay, you do implement OSH because you thought this is the way to do things. This is part of your work culture, and you cannot allow the work even to begin if a certain aspect of safety and health is being sacrificed. So this is what we call transformation of safety culture. So safety culture is not going to be just simply born like that. You need to start. Okay, so that's why it is a step-by-step approach. Okay, so the rest of the slide is basically just explanation on those things. Okay, the impact of safety culture. If, for instance, in any organization you already have a good safety culture, it is basically for your own benefit, for your own organizational benefit, for your own workers' benefit. People is going to be protected. Nobody will get a serious injury or death, and then their health is being protected also, and then uh, your profit can be secure, your reputation. Basically, it is for your own benefit, actually, having a good safety culture. But um, safety culture, again, is not going to be just one day event. You just simply do that's it. You need to develop. That's why in Malaysia, we do have what we call OSH master plan being developed every 5 years. Now we have seen at the end of 2020, that will be the current cycle. Perhaps by next year, we are going to have a new master plan, which is I believe that they are developing those kind of master plan. But you see, we do have one of the target is basically to implement preventive safety culture. Okay, culture is being mentioned there. Okay, so how to implement those things, that is just a matter of using the right strategy. Okay, so you see, to inculcate safety and health culture, it is not going to be easy. You need cooperation from the workers, the what we call the management, the company, and even the government, the NGO, and the major stakeholder have to step in. Otherwise, this thing is not going to be comprehensive. All right. And to implement safety culture is not going to be easy because there could be many challenges. What could be the challenges? One of the main challenges is basically the issue of OSH management system being implemented. Is it comprehensive or not? And if you notice, when we talk about management system, example of management system is ISO 9001. This is for quality. ISO 14001 for the environment. And then ISO 45001, this is for OSH. This is an example of OSH, what we call management system. And out of these three systems, for sure, the least being registered is basically, again, OSH management system. Companies are very happy to go for quality, ISO 9001, because it will give direct benefit to the owner of that organization. It is like a marketing tools where you can use in your business card, you can use in your letterhead, you can use as a wrapping on your product. Everything about your product is being certified as ISO 9001. It is a good marketing tools. So that's why people always go for this kind of OSH management system first. The last that they will go is basically OSH management system. So if this OSH management system is not being comprehensive enough, being implemented widespread in our construction industry also, then how exactly are we going to have a safety culture? It is very difficult, because I would say this OSH management system, as you remember the model, it basically stand at the third step. So this could be a stepping stone for the good safety culture implementation. So if you do not have that thing in place, then safety culture is not going to be easy to be implemented, because you do not have the stepping stone there. All right. And then another issue, SME. SME stands for small and medium enterprise. You know what? 90% of construction organization in Malaysia consists of SME, coming from SME. Only around 10% are big company. We do not have problem with big company. If you did a survey on safety implementation on big project being done by big organization, normally they do not have any issue. They just simply follow the rule and regulation. They invest heavily on that kind of things. But the issue with small and medium enterprise, especially the small one, we know they are basically just barely surviving. They might not have a continuous number of project every year. So for them, implementing all kind of system basically cost them money. Especially they need to pay the what we call subscription fees, and then they need to train people. So for them, that kind of thing is considered as luxury. That will be the issue. So how do we change the culture of the SME? Not about the safety culture, the thinking culture. That is the issue. And then new technology. And we know that we have been introducing a lot of nanotechnology and whatnot. But we never know about the risks in the future, because even though that kind of technology are being tested, but testing is basically very limited. When you basically use that kind of product, then only a few years you are going to see the issue with regard to that kind of product. Either it could pose what we call health issue and whatnot. Maybe you remember the concrete that use foam. People a few years back, industry they are trying to sell the product so-called foamcrete, where they basically inject foam. But then recently there have been some kind of posting with regard to the failure of the foamcrete. Okay, foamcrete. Foamcrete meaning to say Foamcrete. A combination of some kind of foam with concrete. Okay, because it is not a solid concrete, but over a period of time, it basically crack easily compared to what we call concrete. You see, only a matter of time. Then only you know things is going to surface. So similarly, a lot of issue that new product are being introduced, we never know about the impact until a few years from now. That could be the issue. And then the media also not being helpful. In order to promote safety culture, the media, the social media, whatever media, have to play a part. Okay, have to play a part in terms of they should basically write more about safety culture. They should report more based on non-compliance at the industry or at the construction site. So we only see those kind of news only once a while only. It is not a good practice. Okay, so and then people are not going to embrace the concept of implementing safety culture as a whole because they do not see the importance of those things. It is not being highlighted by media, for instance. Okay, so all right then. Okay, that challenges to the safety culture again could be the overall culture itself. Meaning to say, the way that we have been practicing construction, we are so comfortable with our comfort zone, we do not want to change anything. So in order to break the habit, that would be very difficult. Okay, so this is the issue of change management. We want to go into new things, then we need to break a lot of our current habit. Okay, and regulator meaning to say, in order to promote safety culture, we need to introduce a lot of law and regulation. Okay, law and regulation in order uh, to kickstart that kind of habit. We need the law, but the law itself is not going to be the main thing. It's just to kickstart. We need the law, otherwise people will not basically feel the need to implement certain things. Okay, but again, if the regulator, the thinking of people who wanted to promote new law and regulation is not uh, what we call up to the standard of safety culture that we expect, then we see the law is going to be very slow being introduced. And remember, the law has to be passed to the parliament. And what do you expect about the member of parliament? If they are so busy doing other things, especially the politics and whatnot, they simply don't have time to put the thinking on this kind of regulation that promote safety culture. And then management can lose patience because when you introduce something, you expect the result is not going to be overnight. It will take time. Okay, so patience is the keyword to change something. Okay, how do we shape OSH culture? Okay, remember in at any organization, people always thought that productivity is what they basically need to focus. Every day they focus on productivity. Okay, how to produce more and more and more at the shortest possible time. but they forgot that productivity, quality, cost, and even safety basically are interrelated. Just imagine, while rushing to produce some kind of quantity and then accident happen, what would happen to the whole what we call productivity? Will be stopped, will be affected. So whether you like it or not, safety, quality, cost, productivity is the integral part of the management. You need to strike a balance between them. Okay. Similarly, in the case of this COVID-19, we understand COVID-19 is a pandemic, very dangerous, but we can have a lockdown until the end of the year. But then what would happen to economy? Okay, so we must strike a balance between what we call the economic issue and then the health issue. So we must find a ways that this thing basically work hand in hand. Then only we can see the result. Okay, so at the end of the day, safety culture that we envision or we wish is what we call 1-2 safety culture. And remember, based on the development of safety, previously, we already have some kind of basic safety compliance already. Why? Because the law says so. Because there are law and regulation that govern the implementation of safety. In any country, there are some kind of OSH law. You can check what kind of OSH law in your country. There must be some kind of OSH law. In countries like Bangladesh, the OSH law are being embedded into labor law. But in Malaysia, for instance, our labor law are separate things, but our law, OSH law is separate things. Perhaps we are more advanced if we compare to Bangladesh. But in advanced nation, they have more comprehensive law. So never mind, the law is there in order to kickstart something. Okay, the basic safety compliance is there, but then self-directed. Self-directed is related to OSH management system, ISO. Okay, why it is called self-directed? Meaning to say you are the one that subscribe to the system. Nobody forced you to do so, but you feel that it is necessary if you want to make sure that all aspects of the management are being managed systematically. Then you are the one that subscribe to OSH management system, which is very good. Then you are being subjected to audit. Okay, there are rigorous auditing system, internal audit, external audit. That is part and parcel of implementing whatever ISO system. Then only, okay, you reinforce the behavior. Once people get used to, okay, perhaps at the beginning of the implementation, there might be some kind of resistance, people who resist to change to a new thing, but that's okay. But if you have been implementing OSH management system for many years, then perhaps you can see the result. People, what you are trying, you modify the behavior of the people to act in certain manners, okay, and to act certain manners, and then only you are going to achieve so-called what to 1-2 safety culture. 1-2 meaning to say you are the one that do those things without having people to tell you to do so, and that's what we call 1-2 safety culture. Okay, so again, start with have to. Have to basically depend on law and regulation, and then must to is depend on OSH management system. Okay, and then this is law. This is what we call OSH law. And then 1, 2, safety culture. Okay. So how do we do that? We start with employee perception. We must correct the employee perception, how people think about something. Okay. For instance, in Malaysia, we do have large number of foreign workers working at the construction site. And for sure, the foreign workers basically coming from countries which are less developed than Malaysia. That is basically the nature of construction industry. If you go to any country, for instance, Singapore use a lot of Malaysian workers. For sure, Singapore are more developed than us. So we are developing countries. So some of our workers are working as construction workers there. Okay. So when underdeveloped nation goes to a country which basically more developed than them, their countries, for sure the way the system of thinking have to change as well. They cannot have the old mentality, bring those kind of mentality to that countries. Otherwise, that kind of attitude will not work well with a so-called safety culture. Okay, that is one thing. First thing first. Then perception from behavior. Okay, out of the right perception, then people will behave accordingly. Okay, people will behave accordingly, meaning to say the right attitude, the right behavior. Then repeated behavior become habit. So how to basically make one certain thing a habit? You do it repeatedly, again and again and again and again. For instance, let's say you are smoking. How do you, why do you still smoking right now? Because it now becoming a habit. And you know what? People say it is very difficult to break the habit. So that's why you cannot stop smoking, because it has been a habit and then you find it very difficult to stop. So this kind of situation that we want in a safety culture, okay? Similar process. So once you have a good kind of a behavior, doing again and again, and then when people look at you, uh, basically behave in certain manners, then people try to follow. And that's what we call it group behavior. Okay, that group behavior later on will become organizational behavior. That organizational behavior later on become what we call safety culture, organizational culture with regard to safety. Culture basically not only safety and health, but it has something to do with the way people do in doing business. That's what we call organizational culture. And then culture, that would be the ultimate thing that we want is basically, we want to basically have a solid culture being implemented at our organization. And again, by looking at this time frame, safety culture basically will start a long way. It is not an overnight kind of effort. Where do you start? How do you start? You start with the first thing first, knowledge. Perhaps the lowest level, I would say awareness. You start with awareness first. Okay. Perhaps one of the things that you are doing now, you are learning about this course, I would say it's just a level of awareness. We just give you some kind of basic knowledge. We cannot even call it knowledge because knowledge is very big, but perhaps you are aware of safety and health. But then, let's say you do the assignment, then you start to read more and more and more, and then you start taking courses if you want to zoom in your career, as safety officer and whatnot, and then perhaps you will have a full spectrum of knowledge. Okay, once you already have awareness and knowledge, then this awareness and knowledge will shape your attitude, perhaps a positive attitude towards safety and health. For instance, if you do not know the impact of in terms of the cost when accident happen, you might think the accident is basically small things. But when you read through, small accident can have a big impact on the individual, organization, or even a nation, then perhaps it will shape your attitude as not to let, for instance, accident happening either to you, to your family, or even to the organization. And then the right attitude will shape individual behavior. Individual behavior, when you see a lot of people doing the same thing, then you are going to feel ashamed when you do not behave in certain manners. That's what we call group behaviors. Okay, and then group behaviors become culture, okay, but it will develop through times. Okay, it's not going to take 1 or 2. I would say it will take a few years. Then only you have a good culture. So countries like Japan, certain European countries, even US, if you read the history of safety being implemented in their countries, they are simply like us previously. Way back in, there are pictures that show construction workers 100 years back. They do not wear safety helmet. They do not do anything. Okay, because at that particular time, people are not basically aware or don't even care about safety, but they evolve through times. So this is what we developing countries should follow. If we want to be a developed nation, we must remember that developed nation do not have high rate of accident, high rate of fatality, do not have all kind of illnesses with regard to occupational disease. So all kind of those things you need to basically tackle or minimize. In order to do that, you must have some kind of good practice. You must have some kind of law and regulation, and then you must have some kind of R&D with regard to safety and health. That would be things that will make all kind of uh, what we call safety culture implementation successful. Okay, you can start with a small thing first, but then at the end of the day, uh, you achieve your objective. Okay, and then shaping employee perception. Okay, for instance, habit. You start with the habit. What could be a good habit, and then you reinforce that habit. You basically tell people what could be the benefit. You celebrate, meaning to say you reward people if they practice a good habit. Don't forget to praise them, to reward them, and then at the same time basically advise, or even to a certain extent you need to punish people who basically do not want to follow a good habit. Because if you have a lot of people who do not want to follow a good habit and you do not curb that situation, and then it become what we call a toxic, meaning to say other people will tend to think that it is okay to behave badly. Okay, so you need to remove toxic people. Toxic people mean to say people who practice a bad thing or say bad things. So somehow you need to manage them. And at the end of the day, reinforcement system. Okay, you make correction on the bad behavior. So at the end of the day, everything that you see is basically positive behavior. And then in conclusion, okay. So in conclusion, we have said that in order to implement safety culture, we must have the whole safety system in place. Meaning to say it starts with a basic compliance system, self-directed compliance system, reinforcement of behavior, and then habit, and then at the end of the day, only you will get so-called 1-2 safety system. Okay, 1-2 safety system meaning to say nobody force you to do so, you are willingly to do. Okay, when everybody willing, and then when they do that thing, they feel happy. They feel it is part and parcel of their responsibility. And if they do not do that, and they do have some kind of sense of guilty, that is what 1-2 safety culture is all about. Okay, and in order to implement those things, it's not going to be easy. It will take some time, but you must start with a small step first, and then improve, and improve again. All right, that would be all that I need to say about safety culture. Okay, let me stop this thing. Where is the stop recording?